Life can be unpredictable, and things can change in a heartbeat. In January, I did a survey, and yes, you could pay companies to run surveys for you. It's not that expensive, but I asked people who did a state-to-state move in the last 2 years if they regret the move, which state they moved to, and why they regret the move. People more often than not go into a move with high hopes. They got a new job, a new relationship, a fresh start, you're a stalker and you just found out your ex moved to North Dakota, whatever. Sometimes those hopes come crashing down. The job fell through, you had a rough fresh start, your relationship sucks, your stalker ex moved into town, and that's when you really regret your move. In the survey, the reasons were all over the place, but the states were not. 83% of the respondents listed one of 12 states. After that, there was a serious drop-off of people claiming that the states sucked they moved to. The two that almost made the top 10 were Colorado at number 12 and Louisiana at number 11. The next 10s are the ones that showed up most often. I will give you the states people regretted moving to and the reasons that seem to be popping up as to why they regret the move. There's also some very entertaining reasons. I'll add those also. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, California. California was always the place where everyone moved to. I mean, everyone has a dream, and California can facilitate that dream. In a lot of cases, you want to be in TV, you want to be a movie star, you want to get into fashion. Back in the 1800s, you want to strike it rich, mining gold out of the ground, or you just want to live on the beach. There's a lot of reasons people have moved to California over the years, and they don't always work out. I know more than a few people that have moved there to be in Hollywood, stand-up comedians, actors, actresses, whatever. Growing up in Southern California, I don't know how many young girls I met at the beach when I was in my teens and early 20s that had moved to California from like Iowa or Indiana, and they were gonna, get into acting and all that. I know a few still to this day. We know each other on Facebook now, and didn't work out for any of them. And that's usually why people end up regretting the move to California. Something didn't work out. As far as the acting thing goes, I was surprised that a lot of people admitted that that's why they moved there in this survey, and it didn't work out and they ended up heading back home. I mean, that's really hard to admit to people and yourself even. But the two things that seemed to pop up the most was they couldn't afford it and it was too crowded. Obviously, those are coming from people that probably moved to Los Angeles or the San Francisco Bay Area. I did see a few people, now this one was interesting, that they listed that they got a job and it ended up being a scam. So, I mean, there's a lesson there. Make sure if you're taking a job, it's a legit job before you move to California. Number 9, Iowa. Iowa's an interesting place. I mean, I think personally it's one of the best states if you want to raise a family. If you're a young person moving to Iowa for something, I honestly don't think it's got much for you. I mean, Des Moines and Sioux City really aren't big cities, and those are the biggest thing the state has to offer. Actually, I think Cedar Rapids is a little bit bigger than Sioux City.
A few minutes later.
Actually, I just looked it up, and Des Moines has a population of 212,000. Cedar Rapids has 136,000. Davenport has 101,000, and Sioux City comes in at number 4 with 85,000. Those aren't really big cities, even if you pushed them all together. And young people, more often than not, in their 20s or even their 30s, they need a city in most cases for whatever job they went to school for, things like that. These cities aren't that big. Not a lot of opportunity. Now, some of the most common reasons were listed is it's boring and they didn't get paid enough. That popped up a whole bunch. They weren't getting paid enough. Now, they do have a low cost of living and housing's really inexpensive, but I think a lot of people will look at how much they could get paid in someplace else and not really, do the math there. Sure, if you're a graphic artist in Chicago or New York, you might make $20,000 more, but you're really not because it's so expensive to live in those places and housing is just through the roof. One guy stated they didn't like his type, and then he put, "if you know what I mean." No, I don't. I don't know what type you are. I could assume, but I don't think that's fair to you or Iowa. Number 8, Ohio. There's a lot of reasons to regret moving to Ohio. Ask anyone from Ohio and they'll probably tell you they regret being born in Ohio in a lot of cases. The state has struggled with employment numbers and poverty for decades. They are a Rust Belt state and most of them have been just in shambles for decades and decades. Ohio was also hit pretty bad by the opioid crisis, and it still continues. The two most common answers, though, for people that said they regret moving to Ohio, the state is depressing and it's ugly. Number 7, Oregon. Okay, so I live in Oregon, so yeah, I'm probably a little bit biased, but I know Oregon does have its problems, and its main problem is Portland, Oregon. That's not the only problem. We have some other problems here in the Pacific Northwest, and one of the major reasons people regret moving here, it's the weather. The amount of rain Oregon gets is legendary, but it's not the whole state. It's really just the western, northwestern section of the state that gets all the rain, up near Portland. Portland is a depressing city, and it's not just the weather, it's all the other things that go into making Portland the city that it is that makes you depressed. I don't know, I still love the state and the city. But yeah, weather and Portland were the two most common things that I saw people gave as their reason for regretting the move to Oregon. One of my favorite was, this was someone's response, Portland sucks and the rest of the state is white trash. Okay, maybe. I've been to Burns, Oregon, I could see that. Number 6. Illinois. Yeah, imagine that. Illinois. They've got Chicago, and a lot of people, they don't like Chicago. I like Chicago. I think it's great. But then again, I don't go into the suburbs or anything like that when I visit. I've kind of driven through, things like that. I don't spend any time in that part of Chicago. I spend my time near the Loop. But everyone on the planet knows that Southside Chicago sucks. And people list that a lot. It's dangerous. One strange thing I did see a lot of for people saying they regret moving to Illinois is education costs are going up, and so are the taxes. I guess if you want to go to college at a reasonable rate, pick someplace else besides Illinois right now. I saw a few things that gone up. I just did a quick research on education costs in Illinois, and there are some things that are going up. I didn't see anything major like a spiked city tuition, by 30%. I didn't see anything pop up like that, but apparently that's how people feel, and that's why a lot of people regretted moving to Illinois. Just costs too much, especially for education. Number 5, New York. Now, New York always has this problem, sort of like Illinois. People just are focusing on New York City, and in Illinois, they're focusing on Chicago when they respond to these things. And it makes sense because that's where most of the people moving are moving to if they go to those states. New York has some great cities and towns in upstate New York and other parts. New York City has its challenges, and it's not for everyone. New York City is one of those cities that can really kick you in the pants and send you home. The most common theme to why people regretted moving to New York, and yeah, again, it has something to do with New York City, but it was financially undoable and it's far too crowded. But yeah, like I said, this was about the state, and I think most of the people responding focused on New York City. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Number 4, Arizona. Arizona had something that we saw in Oregon. People said there's a lot of white trash in Arizona. They also claimed the heat was just unbearable, and it was more than they thought it was going to be as far as heat-wise. A lot of people move from other places. Oh, I'd love a warm climate. Then you get to Arizona, and that's some serious heat. There's no blue law, and I think it's in Arizona that says it's illegal to fry an egg on the sidewalk. I thought I'd look one up and see if that's one of those things that can actually happen. And I saw a few videos of people in Arizona actually going outside to test this, and their eggs were actually fried. One guy was in Florence, Arizona, which is in between Phoenix and Tucson. And yeah, he put the egg on the sidewalk. He said it was 117 degrees that day, and it started frying on the sidewalk. No pan, no nothing. Put it straight on the sidewalk. And so I think a lot of the people, and from the answers that I got, they'd moved from a colder climate to Arizona and didn't realize that it can get that hot, and it was just a little too much for them. Number 3, Connecticut. Connecticut has a bunch of problems, and it usually centers around the people that actually live in Connecticut. I kept seeing all over it when the people that listed Connecticut, they got tired of stupid and rude people seemed to be the theme for Connecticut. I assume all those people were living in Hartford because Hartford is kind of known for that. Also had a lot of people that said the job that they moved to Connecticut for fell apart, or it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. Number 2, Idaho. Now this one surprised me. A lot of people have been moving to Idaho for quite a few years. And that kind of plays into the main reason a lot of people regretted moving there. The most common thing was it was more crowded than they thought it was going to be. They said that Boise has gotten too big, and they named some of the other cities that have gotten a little too big and it's getting too crowded, and that was their biggest problem. Now, what's strange is this is what people that have lived in Idaho their whole life have been saying for years. It's getting too crowded. Sadly, when you have a nice place to live, which Idaho is, people flock there. I mean, if you don't want people to move to your state, start running your state like Mississippi does. Nobody wants to move to Mississippi. And I know the comment section is going to have a bunch of people saying, well, don't come to Idaho and screw it up like you did California. Well, here's the thing. They didn't screw it up. The politicians screwed up California, and you could argue that they voted for those politicians. Well, the people that voted for those politicians aren't moving to Idaho. They're staying in California because they got what they want. And the people that lean left, they do move out of the state. More than likely, they're moving to Washington or Oregon, not Idaho. The only state that can truly complain about that is Texas, because it doesn't matter how you vote, everyone's moving to Texas. It's slowed down a little bit in the last few years, but it's still happening. Idaho, you're getting mostly right-wing people from California, so quit thinking that it's a thing. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. We also have a channel called On This Day. There's a link down below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Florida. Florida's always been a popular state for people to move, and it's not just the retirees coming from New York looking for warmer weather. A lot of people move to Florida. A lot of people leave Florida soon after. There's actually a lot of retirees will move down to Florida, and then they decide they don't like it for whatever reason, and they move to South Carolina or North Carolina. They call it halfbacks. They went halfway back to New York. A lot of the responses for not wanting to live in Florida was the people. The people have turned a lot of newcomers off of the state. One person said they almost encourage and celebrate stupidity in Florida. It's like, that's kind of rude. But like every state, Florida has some amazing things, and then it has some things that people don't like. And I think one of the biggest things for people that move down there that regret the move is they come from a state that's a lot different. New York, New England, somewhere in that area, and they move down to Florida, and it's just too different for them. Southern lifestyle is a lot different than, let's say, the northeastern lifestyle. But with Florida, the two main things I would say had to do with the people and the weather as to why people regretted moving to Florida. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.